I'm Chef Susie with Escoffier Online, and today I'm going to be making the carrot cake assessment, and the carrot cake is going to have some cream cheese icing on it. And then when we're finished with the carrot cake, we're going to keep up with our new tradition of talking about a cordial, or also known as an after dinner drink. So knowing that, let's get started. I have all of my mise en place, everything that I need for the assessment out on my table. And I also have my sanitizing solution, my spray bottle, and my solution in the bucket with the rag. So I'm going to put these away, and then we're going to get started. Okay, first of all, the main ingredient in the carrot cake is, of course, the carrots, and I've grated up my carrots ahead of time. I have my 5 ounces of carrots, but I just kind of wanted to show everyone how easy it is to grate your carrots. You can use it, you can do them in your food processor or just with a basic box grater like this. I really like these. And I usually use the wider side of the grater, but you can also use the finer side too. So these are great to have for your carrots, your zucchini, for your zucchini bread, or even your cheeses too. So you just hold the top, and they usually have a handle on them, and then you just carefully grate the carrot. It's pretty easy. You could buy these in most stores. Then you just kind of tap it off the inside, and then you have your grated carrot. So knowing that, let's get started on the mix. Okay, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and sift my flour, my baking powder, my baking soda, my salt, and my cinnamon together. It's going to aerate it a little bit, make sure there's no lumps in here. So I have all of these things here, and this is one of these recipes that calls for 2 leaveners in it. You have both the baking powder and the baking soda. And when you're doing your mise en place, I know that it can seem kind of tedious having all these little containers, but try to keep everything separate rather than putting the baking powder and the baking soda right in with the flour. I know it can make a lot of sense to save time and space, but what if your phone rings or someone disturbs you and you're not sure if you actually measured that baking soda out and put it in the flour? You see something white in there, but you're not really sure. You could end up actually throwing things away by doing that. So I see I don't have any lumps in here, and I have some meal from my wheat, so I'm just going to go ahead and put that back in because everything is well aerated. We don't want to waste that. So knowing that, we're going to set this aside, and we're going to put our oil and our sugar on the machine. We're going to use the whisk attachment. And then we're going to be adding our eggs, and then we're going to aerate that until it's a little bit lighter in color. So we're just going to go ahead and whisk these together a little bit. Then I'm going to scrape the bowl down. Kind of move this out of the way a little bit. And we're going to get that mixed in. Then we're going to add the eggs. And then we're going to let it aerate for a few minutes. And if you have any questions, I'd love to answer them. I'm going to move these things out of the way to keep our work area clean. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this up to about a medium speed and let this aerate. Once that's aerated, we're going to add our crushed pineapple and our carrots. Then I'm going to pull it off the machine, and I'm going to be folding in the flour, and then we're going to fold in the coconut and the walnuts last. So I have my crushed pineapple already drained. I used a canned pineapple, which is just fine for this. It's actually probably a little bit better because it's nice and soft. So I drained it really well, and if I see any liquid, I'll drain it again. But I actually put it in the strainer for about an hour before the show and let all that liquid come out. So the pineapple is going to give the cake some moisture, and it's going to give it a nice flavor too. And if you need to eliminate the coconut because you have an allergy for some reason, or if there's some reason that you can't have it, that's okay too. We've tried this with eliminating the coconut, and it works out just fine. And we have a question.
What number is the
Medium speed. Okay. What number is medium speed? Well, depending on your mixer, it's going to be right in the middle. This mixer ranges from 0 to 10, so I've got it on a 5. So it's right in the middle. And medium high would of course be like 7. Medium low would be maybe like 3. So like I said, depending on your mixer, hand mixer, I'm not sure if it goes 1 through 10 also, but just pick the middle number. And we have another question. The question is about the flour, if I use wheat flour, and the recipe calls for wheat flour, so keep in mind with your assessments the first time you're doing them, don't change anything up, go ahead and follow the recipe exactly, so go ahead and use the wheat flour. And this is the whole wheat flour, and it's not the self-rising flour like the one that we use for the apple pecan muffins, so be mindful of that, because we added the leavener and the salt to the flour. If you use that self-rising flour, you're going to have way too much leavener in that, and make sure you keep those separate. So my eggs are pretty well aerated. They've gotten lighter in color, and I'm just going to turn my machine up a little bit. I'd like to see them get just a tad lighter. So this is aerating them and helping make the cake a little bit lighter. So this is another cake that's like an all-American favorite. Everyone likes carrot cake. And another thing I wanted to mention too, if you need to leave out the nuts because you can't have nuts, or if you have a nut allergy, go ahead and you can leave them out. You just won't have as much density to the recipe, but it'll turn out just fine. But if you can, for your assessment, make it as it is in the recipe. So I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to pull it off, and we're going to do the rest by hand. And remember, this is a cake. It's going to be a little bit more delicate than the breads that we've made, so we kind of want to treat it gently. So I'm going to put my carrots and my pineapple in first. And then I'm just going to fold my flour in, just very gently. And you can add the pineapple and the carrots while it's still on the machine if you like. That's fine, you're not going to hurt them at all. If they break up a little bit, that's just fine. So just mix them till you get everything broken up. Then I'm going to go ahead and add that flour in. And I'm going to try not to mix it too much. I'm going to be gentle, keeping in mind I don't want to be working any of the gluten. And I'm using my plastic handled spatula, nice scraper. It's going to do really good on the sides and go all the way to the bottom. So this is kind of a little bit of a thick mix, but it's going to be very moist because you've got the carrots in here that are going to add the moisture, and you've got the coconut, which will add some moisture and texture too. And you've also got that pineapple, which is going to add a lot of moisture for you. So we're going to add the coconut, going to mix it in a little bit, and then I'll go ahead and add the nuts. Okay. And we're going to be baking this in a 350 degree oven for about 45 minutes. But keep an eye on it, test it with the toothpick, see if it springs back. It may take a little bit less time. So the carrot cake is looking good. And I always look at cinnamon in the carrot cake as one of the key ingredients because it gives it a little bit of darkness that it needs and a lot of flavor. So now that I have everything incorporated, I'm going to bake it in an 8-inch pan, which I've sprayed lightly, and I put a parchment in the bottom. So the parchment is going to help the cake not stick, of course. And after you bake the cake, if you need to store it, the parchment really helps with keeping the moisture in. If you're going to be storing the cake for maybe a day or so before you're going to use it, go ahead and leave that parchment paper on. It'll help keep the moisture in. And then you can just take it off when it's time to use the cake. So we're going to pop this in the oven. And I've prepared a cake earlier, and we'll go ahead and make our icing and ice that cake. Okay. Okay, we're going to get some of these things off the table that we don't need anymore. And for this icing, since I've softened the butter and the cream cheese, I'm going to go ahead and use the whisk attachment. So that's going to help aerate it a little bit and incorporate it really well. It's a little bit lighter icing than our buttercream icing, which we mixed with the paddle, because it was a little bit heavier. This one's going to be a little bit lighter. So we're going to go ahead and mix our butter and our cream cheese together. Like I said, they're both at room temperature. And we have a question.
Cake pan or a spring form pan?
The question is, did I use a cake pan or a spring form pan? I used a cake pan, but a spring form pan will work for this too. And the cake will release fine out of a regular cake pan because it's a heavy cake. It's like a devil's food cake or a yellow cake that you would make. So you'll be fine if you don't use a spring form. So we're going to put our butter and our cream cheese on the machine with the whisk attachment. We're going to mix it together. Then we're going to add the vanilla and then the powdered sugar. And we're going to scrape down everything in between. I'm going to move some of these things under my table so they're out of the way. I'm going to let that mix a little bit, and then we're going to add the vanilla. So I'm going to go ahead and sift my powdered sugar. Get a little bit of flour on there. I like to reuse these parchment papers. So I've got my powdered sugar, and this is just one of these things that can be so lumpy at times. Especially when you're in a commercial kitchen, you're going to get a big bag of it, and it can be really lumpy. So be mindful of that. I think that this is probably more lumpy than any flour you'll ever see. So I've got a little bit in the bottom, and I'm just going to press it through with my hand a little bit. And now our powdered sugar is sifted. So it looks like our cream cheese and our butter is mixed in pretty good. I'd like to get in here and scrape it down a little bit. Make sure there aren't any lumps of one or another. Then I'm going to go ahead and add my vanilla. Then I'm going to add my powdered sugar. Since I have a pretty good amount, I'm just going to add a little bit at a time. Maybe 1/3, then I'll mix it so it doesn't come up on me in the machine. Then I'll add the other third and then the last third. We'll kind of break it up that way a little bit. Okay, you're going to start it out pretty low so it doesn't go everywhere. We're going to scrape this down in between. So this is a nice icing. You can also use this icing on your red velvet cupcakes. which is a traditional icing for those. So this is something that you're going to be using a lot. And this icing is also really nice for a banana cake. If you ever make a banana cake, the cream cheese icing goes very well with that. So I'm going to scrape down my bowl because I've got some powdered sugar sticking to the sides here. And then we're going to add a little bit more of our powdered sugar, and then we'll add the last amount after we scrape down the bowl again. So like I said, this is a nice icing. You'll be using it a lot in the years to come. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to take a little bit to get this incorporated. I'm going to go ahead and scrape it down again. Okay, just about ready. Do you have another question? The question is do I think this would be too rich for a Chelsea bun? Not at all. It's very similar to a Chelsea bun, an icing for a cinnamon roll. If you look up a cream cheese icing, so you could use it on the Chelsea bun. I just wouldn't put too much on there. But I think it would go very nice with that, or even if you made the cinnamon roll version of the Chelsea bun, I think it would be very nice. So I'm going to mix this well again, then I'm going to scrape it down, and it's just about done, and we'll be ready to bake our carrot, we'll be ready to decorate our carrot cake, which I've already baked. Okay, looking good. Just want to get in there and get all this powdered sugar and make sure there's no lumps of any cream cheese or butter in the bottom, and it looks good. This is going to be a little bit more yellow in color than your buttercream, so don't be alarmed when you're mixing your buttercream and aerating it. It's getting a lot lighter, but since you've got the cream cheese in here, it's going to have a little bit more of a yellow color. So our icing is looking perfect. I'm going to pull it off, and then we'll go ahead and decorate our cake. You can kind of tap to get all of that icing out of the inside. And sometimes if you're using something a little bit thicker, you might have to get in there with your spatula to get it out of the whisk. So I'm just kind of mixing it one more time since I have it off the machine to make sure everything is well incorporated. And that's our cream cheese icing. So I've got my carrot cake that I've baked earlier. And when you're putting this cream cheese icing on your carrot cake, make sure that it's cool all the way. Otherwise, it's going to melt on you. So this cake, I let it cool completely, and I even put it in the refrigerator for a little bit, and it has a little bit of a chill to it. But don't put this icing or any icing with the butter in it on a warm cake, because it's just going to melt. Or don't fill a warm cake with a mousse. Be mindful of that. You want it to be cold. So I'm going to go ahead and fill my pastry bag. And this is a thicker icing, so I'm not going to have to put this in a cup or a container. While I'm filling the bag, I can just fold it over my hand and kind of put everything in. When you're using something a little bit looser in your bag, you're going to want to put it in a cup, or even if it's kind of new to you and it's a little bit easier that way, then go ahead and put it in a container while you fill it. And we have another question. The question is, can you use the paddle attachment with the cream cheese frosting? Yes, you can. It'll work out just fine. And what I'm going to do is I'm just pushing my icing down, holding onto the top. Then I'm just going to twist the bag to secure the ends so the icing doesn't come out the back while I'm piping. So with the paddle attachment with this icing, it'll work out just fine. Just make sure that your cream cheese and your butter are both at room temperature. So we're just going to put some stars on this cake. For the decorating, you can kind of do it however you like, but I like to just pipe stars, or you can even pipe just little plain rounds with your plain tube, and it gives the cake a nice effect. So I usually start in the middle with a line, and then I just kind of go across and keep going back and forth. And you can go around the edge to start if that's how you like, but this is just the way that I usually do it. So what I'm doing is I'm just squeezing and then I'm pulling up and squeezing and pulling up. And I stop squeezing before I pull the star tip up. This way you don't get a tail. And something like this would be really good practice for practicing your simple piping skills. Doesn't have to be perfect, especially you'll see when you cut it. Any flaw that you have is going to go completely unnoticed. So I'm holding the bag up straight. I'm holding the bag straight up, squeezing the star and lifting up after I stop squeezing.
Is that a large star tip you're using?
The question is this a large star tip I'm using? Yes, it's a pretty big star. It's not the largest one, but it is considered a large star tip. You can use a smaller one for smaller stars. You're going to have less icing, and it's going to take you longer too. So it's really whatever you like. I picked this tip because I'm getting a nice layer of icing on it, and it's going to have a nice look to it too. So this is our finished cake. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a piece. And I've got some caramel sauce and some mandarin oranges and some blackberries. And on my carrot cake, I also like to put a little bit of toasted coconut. So I have a container with some warm water and my knife in it, and this is going to give me a nice clean cut. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut a wedge out of the cake.
Should the cake be one layer or two, Shelley?
The question is, should the cake be one layer or two? If you'd like to divide the batter in two and make a 2-layer cake, that would be nice, and put a little cream cheese icing in between. But the single layer for this is just fine. But you do see a lot of carrot cakes that do have a filling in them. But be mindful, if you fill it, let it set up a little bit before you cut it, because the filling may squish out. Put it in the fridge, give that butter and cream cheese a chance to firm up a little bit before you cut it. So I'm just going to be cutting my wedge. I have a nice clean cut. And I'm going to be putting some caramel sauce on the plate. You can use any kind of sauce you like. I like caramel sauce with my carrot cake, and I'm just going back and forth, or you can go around the plate. And you can also do a raspberry sauce if you like to, for a little bit of red color. So this is our carrot cake. It's got some nice texture with the coconut and the walnuts. So I'm just going to put maybe a mandarin orange on top. And be mindful when your assessment is asking for a plate up to plate it up and use a garnish too when it's asking for a garnish. And sometimes the assessment will suggest a garnish, or you can just use whatever you think looks nice. But make sure that you have something on there, because it makes things look a lot more finished. So I've got my blackberries and my mandarin oranges. And then I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit of toasted coconut on the cake, and I'm also gonna put a little bit on the plate too. This is gonna give it a little extra crunch, and it's gonna add a little bit of texture too. So this is our carrot cake assessment, and we're getting ready to wrap up. We're gonna talk about our cordials, and if you have any questions, try to get them in. So the two cordials that I have today are Kahlua and Grand Marnier. So I'm gonna grab those. So like a lot of our cordials, these come in cute little bottles, and we have our Kahlua, which is a coffee flavored rum, and it's from a Mexican company. This is a product of Mexico, and it was first introduced in 1936, so it's been around for a while. And this is a coffee flavored rum, and it's made with coffee beans from Veracruz, Mexico. And we have a question.
How do you toast the coconuts?
The question is, how did I toast the coconut? I just took a little bit of shredded coconut and I put it in my 350-degree oven that I had my cake in, and I just kept an eye on it. It usually takes in between 5 and 10 minutes. And once the outside starts to brown a little bit, I pull it out of the oven and I kind of mix it up by hand a little bit and put it back in, and this way you get a nice even toast. Then cool it off before you put it on the cake. And whatever you have remaining, you can put in an airtight container and just keep it on your shelf or in your kitchen cabinet. You don't have to refrigerate it, and then you'll have a nice little decoration garnish for your cupcakes or your cakes right on hand. We have another question.
Do you have to decorate the plate? I guess for the assessment.
The question is, do you have to decorate the plate? For this assessment, it's asking for a plated with the garnish. So yes, decorate the plate with some fruit or something that you have, definitely. You can even use, if you don't have any fresh berries, you can use some raisins or some apricots, but dress it up a little bit. You worked hard on your cake and you want to present it nicely. So keep an eye on those assessments that are asking for a garnish, because we're looking for that. So please put something on there. It's going to make it look finished and it's going to give it some color. So back to our Kahlua, which is our coffee flavored rum. This company also offers a Kahlua that's called a Kahlua Especial. And for a long time, it was only available in the duty-free shops, but it has been available in the U.S. since 2002. And it's a 36 proof, and it's not as sweet. It's a little bit different. It's their special, it's their premium. Whereas this regular one is just 20 proof. So I like to use just the 20 proof, not the Especial, but it's whatever you like. And this is really nice. You can drink it with cream, or you can drink it with a little bit of coffee, or even in a hot chocolate. And it's really wonderful for making mousses and ice creams, and it's especially excellent for soaking chocolate cake, especially devil's fruit cake. We have another question.
I know I'm gonna murder this man. Can you use mascarpone cheese for the frosting?
The question is, can you use the mascarpone cheese for the frosting? You can. It's a little bit softer. It's a triple cream cheese. We talked about this last week with our cheesecake, but you have to be mindful with this mascarpone that you can overmix it. It's going to break down just as if a whipped cream would. So treat it just like that. If you want to use the mascarpone for that little different flavor, when you're mixing it, be careful not to overmix it. A lot of times with the mascarpone, when you first start mixing it, it's going to get a little bit looser and then it's going to come together. So be careful, don't cross that line where you're overmixing it where it's going to break. I recommend for your assessment using the cream cheese, and if you want to try the mascarpone later on, definitely do, because it's going to give it a nice flavor, but it's a little more temperamental. The cream cheese, you can mix it in, it's really not going to hurt it, but that mascarpone, it will. So be mindful of that. So our second cordial is our Grand Marnier, which is an orange flavored brandy, and it's made from cognac and bitter orange, and it has some sugar in it too. and this is a product of France. This is a really nice liqueur. It's been around since 1880, and it's just wonderful for flavoring a lot of things. If you like strawberries, you can put some strawberries with a little powdered sugar, sprinkle some Grand Marnier, and toast them up, toss them up a little bit, and serve them with a little bit of whipped cream. That really shows off the flavor. This is just an ultra classic liqueur, and it's very elegant, has a very distinct flavor. You will fall in love with this once you try it. It's used a lot in pastry kitchens. It's very popular. We have another question.
Is it better to make a cake from scratch than to use a box cake from the store?
The question is it better to make a cake from scratch rather than use a box cake from the store? Of course it is. Because it tastes a lot better. It's not going to have the preservatives in it. It's something that you can leave your mark on. You made it by hand. You made it from scratch. But a lot of times those convenience products do come in handy. If you're busy, you don't have time, or if you have small children and you're trying to teach them the basic fundamentals of baking, those are wonderful. But you're in the Escoffier baking and pastry program, so you're going to be making your cakes from scratch. So back to the Grand Marnier. This is a wonderful liqueur, and it's also known for the famous French dessert crepe Suzette, which this is in the dessert. And this also has a little bit of a link to Auguste Escoffier. So the gentleman that started this company, Alexandre Marnier, he had César Ritz, who started the Ritz hotels. He asked César to come up with a name for this liqueur. This is how the story goes. And César came up with the name Grand Marnier. And the story being told says that Alexandre helped César open his Paris Ritz Hotel, which is where Escoffier worked with César. So buy a bottle of Grand Marnier to commemorate Auguste Escoffier. And thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next week.